All right, guys, before we get started, I just want to acknowledge the family who has joined us. Lene, Elizabeth, Clarence, Pappy Hot, Dee Dee, Lakeisha, Rachel, LaShawn, Janice, Jaguar, Jay, and the list goes on and on. Andre, good to see you guys. We're jumping into this topic about why couples stop having sex. You know, we talk about the 5 things that impact a marriage the most. We're talking about money, communication, in-laws, parenting, and you guessed it, sex. Sexuality is one of those things that usually presents a problem earlier in the relationship. If something is to go wrong, that's one of the areas that couples struggle with. And interestingly enough, the challenges that people have a lot of times is blamed on a number of things. And the things that we typically blame it on, they're legitimate, there's no question about it, but oftentimes there's surface issues that speak to a deeper issue that it takes couples quite some time to get to. But these are some of the things that we typically hear when sex begins to dwindle. Number 1, we're too busy with kids. We're too busy with work and we just don't have the time. You know what? Busyness is a thing. And we talk about how oftentimes when you got married, you gave up your relationship for the sake of the marriage. That earlier in the relationship, even before you said I do, you spent so much quality time together. You were falling asleep on the phone. You would talk for hours. You would dress up. You would look great for each other. Recreational companionship. You were in each other's arms. You were affectionate. And somehow once you said I do and entered into a marriage, it seems like all of the romantic essence of the relationship somehow began to dissipate. And then it became about bills and babies and homework and extracurricular and work and ministry and everything else. And your relationship becomes last on the totem pole. And so what happens is you don't have enough time and you're giving each other the leftovers of one another. And if I'm tired and exhausted at the end of the day, certainly there's no time for sex. And so we've allowed kids, because you know kids, we love them, and when we get married we want them, but oftentimes they can become love busters because you're dealing with little ones who always tend to get in the way, and then work, and then just tired. And so that's one of the excuses that we give. Another one is we lost our spark. We had it, but I'm just not attracted to my spouse anymore. And there's validity to that. You know, we go through changes, the intensity, the passion, the desire that we had, the euphoric feeling at the beginning of the relationship, the in-love feeling. We know that statistically that lasts for about 2 years before that begins to wither and wane. But then we have to do things that are intentional to bring that passion back. But if we are not, the attraction that we once had, we no longer seem to have at some point in the relationship. Interestingly enough, there was a study done on men and women regarding sexuality, and it said that women's desirability significantly plummets in the marriage much faster than a man, interestingly enough. And there's many things that contribute to that, which we can get into in other shows, but this is what we're talking about. Another excuse, when we do have sex, it goes well, but it's always awkward either initiating sex or the conversation thereafter. You know, I can't tell you how many couples we work with where both spouses have a desire for intimacy. Both spouses are longing for a sexual experience, but for some reason there's a weirdness, there's an awkwardness, and how do I initiate? And the last time I attempted, it didn't go so well, and so I'm nervous and I'm unsure, and so I'm reading body language, and I just made the assumption that maybe I shouldn't go in this direction, and so I guess not tonight, we'll try it another night. And one night turns into another, turns into a week, turns into a month, and before you know it, an extenuating period of time has taken and you have not been intimate. And let me just tell you something, guys. Intimacy is critically important simply because it serves as a protector. It's like placing a wall of protection around your marriage. When you don't have it regularly, it creates a vulnerability for anything to happen. And so for the sake of protecting the marriage, you guys need to get in the bed and become sexually involved because it's so critically important. It is an emotional need. It's more than just physical. Yes, it is emotional. All right, let's go to the next one. I'm waiting for him or her to initiate. That's kind of an extension of the last one. But oftentimes in conversations, couples often say, well, I thought that you would initiate, and because you didn't, I didn't think that you were interested. Well, I'm always initiating, and sometimes I get turned down, so it would be nice if you initiated. And here we have two couples desiring the same thing. Neither of them are making a move to make things better, and so as a result, nothing happens. Another reason why couples stop having sex is because one of them, typically it would be the male, but we see that many women fall victim to this too. They're obsessed with internet porn, and nothing is left over after that. Like, what happens is the more you involve yourself in porn, it changes your appetite. It changes what you desire. You begin to have expectations of what sex should look like based upon what you're seeing on a screen, and that may not be the reality in your marriage. You're having an idea of a standard of beauty based upon what you're seeing, and then you're faced with the reality of what you're dealing with, and it's not perfect. And so oftentimes it has been said that the more you watch porn, it can actually make you a lousy lover, because in porn, whether you're dealing with male fantasized porn, where it's always a woman pleasing a man and there's no intimacy, in 2.3 seconds she's hot and steamy and bothered and ready to go, and everything is hard and fast, and I mean, it doesn't give you a true sense of what intimacy looks like. Likewise, women who get into porn, who are more into erotica, oftentimes have a completely different scenario where everything is so romantic, and the music and the lights and the caviar and all of those wonderful things, and the process that you go through may not line up with what you're experiencing. And so when you have these outside influences that are polar opposites that are giving you an idea of what sexuality should look like, and you're not experiencing that in your relationship, you begin to question, are we doing something wrong? This is just not right. It's not working for me. It's because you have a desire that was created from something that was fictitious and fake in the first place and didn't align with the reality of your experience. And so we would encourage you to push away from that, because it compromises and sabotages the integrity of your sex life. Then we have another one. I'm just not a sexual person. I'm not interested in sex. A lot of times people say that. Maybe that desire has died down within them based upon the circumstances that they're in. You know what I find to be interesting, there was once a woman I was doing some work with who said, you know what, it's interesting. While I was in my marriage, I just wasn't sexual. I didn't have a desire for it. But now that I'm single, I want it all the time. Why is that? And I find that to be very intriguing. And so interesting when you begin to study and understand the impact of marriage and family on one's sexuality. It has a tremendous impact that can last for quite some time and shifts things within you. And so if you're not clear on what those family dynamics are and the marital dynamics that can impact your desirability, then you will fall victim to the same thing that so many others have fallen victim to, particularly this woman. Another reason, I just feel like we're just friends and our relationship doesn't feel sexual at all. And this is what happens when we go from soulmates to role mates to roommates, right? Oftentimes we feel like there's just nothing there. There's no passion, there's no desire. We show up as partners. We know how to work a business together. We know how to plan events together. We know how to vacation together. We know how to parent together. We know how to do all of these incredible things. But when it comes to our intimacy, something is just missing. And so these are the surface issues. These are the things that people speak to because there are deeply rooted issues that they are not speaking to. What are some of the real reasons? The real reasons. And if you've been experiencing this in your marriage, if this sounds remotely similar to what you've been going through, please share with us. We would love to hear your comments or have your questions as we weigh in on this particular topic. But the reality is, at the core of it all, oftentimes when this happens, what happens is people have pulled away from the relationship. You have a possibility where one person has 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And think about it, as they're transitioning out, even though the divorce may take place, let's just say 2020, they may have mentally or emotionally already checked out and left 2018. So for 2 years, they weren't into the relationship. They weren't into you. There was no type of connection. So any attempt at sex was something that they were not interested in. So it's a matter of finding out what has caused that person to drift, what has caused the emotional disconnect between the two. Because at the end of the day, sex is nothing more than a physical interaction, but at the root of it all, it's a level of intimacy where two people come together, where there's ties, where there's trust, where there's intimacy, where there's communication. There's so many other things, so many other emotions involved in the sexual experience. So if we reduced it down to just sex, we're making a mistake, because oftentimes when sex stops happening in a marriage, generally speaking, it's not because there's anything physically wrong, but there's an emotional issue or a relational issue that has not been resolved. One of the other core reasons why couples stop having sex, and we find this to be very, very common, is that one partner does not feel safe sexually in their marriage. And a lot of that has to do with their childhood. Sexual abuse, sexual molestation, things that they experienced from previous relationships that has caused trauma. And as a result of it, they don't feel safe to engage with their spouse. So they don't. And you have a lot of individuals who are now asexual, and they're in marriages that are asexual. It just doesn't exist. Or the only time it does exist is periodically in a moment of vulnerability. And this is what we will call the sexless marriage. And by definition, the sexless marriage is the couple who engages in sex anywhere between once a month to 10 times a year. Now that's a serious problem. And at the end of the day, it's nothing to do with the couple itself, but past experiences and trauma and issues that person has not healed from yet. And it's spilling or bleeding into the relationship. Jay says, after finding out last year my husband cheated and gave me an STD, I definitely don't initiate sex, and I'm still here. That's about all I can give. See, this is one of the consequences of what happens when there's infidelity. And we talk about this all the time. What if there's a child as a result of the affair? What if there's an STD as a result of the affair? These are the complexities that go along with it. And when someone has experienced this, it literally shuts them down and a wall is erected. And oftentimes this wall could be as thick as a 6-lane highway. And it takes a whole lot to begin to tear down that wall. And so at the end of the day, a feeling of not being safe is at the core of this situation. And so that's why safety has to be restored in order for trust to be restored, for a level of intimacy to, enter back into that relationship. And so if that's you and you're struggling in your marriage because of an affair and you're looking to get help, you've been stuck in this space for quite some time, we encourage you, go to Couples Academy, set up a free discovery call. Let's talk about these things so that we can help you overcome the challenges that you're experiencing. Another thing that happens, one of the core reasons that couples just stop having sex, something happened or it just isn't working. The loss of sexual connection can result from an unresolved incident that's happened in the relationship that neither you are speaking to. A challenge that you've experienced, a pain that you've endured, a sexual incident that didn't go right or continues to not go right. And rather than having conversation about it, we just shut down and we suppress it and we choose to just deal with it, or we fake, right, to give our spouse the benefit of the doubt, to make them feel as if he or she is doing something that they're not. But in essence, we're not being satisfied. These are some of the things that can cause a challenge and a shutdown in the relationship regarding sexuality. Another reason, and I hope this is helping you guys, another reason is medication or physical difficulties. Many people have experienced health conditions, and we know that general health affects sexual health. So if you are unhealthy, your sex life can then be unhealthy as well. So the key to sexual health is your overall general health. And we know that medications can alter desire, or can destroy desire, right? It can cause all types of experiences and pains in your body that just don't make it comfortable for you to engage in sex. There's couples that we work with that literally sex is painful. it creates a discomfort, and they're not able to freely enjoy the way that they would want to. And so as a result, it's impacted sex. And so there's so many things that you can do to help resolve that problem. There are other medications. There's sexual therapy, which we would always encourage. There's so many ways to have sexual or sensual intimacy if penetration isn't involved, so it could at least create stimulation and a desirable feeling for both parties if that is the situation. But see, this is why it's so important to talk through these issues. And so the question is, with all of these challenges that people are experiencing, what do we do about it? How do we overcome this? How do we get beyond this so things can begin to turn around? A couple of things. Number one, for those couples who just say, you know what, we just don't have the time. It seems like one day kind of spills into another. We got kids, we got work, we have all these responsibilities that take priority, and so therefore we just don't have the time. Well, what we have found is that when you take the time to schedule sex, now I know for some of you that sounds unromantic. That sounds like yuck. Schedule sex. It should be organic. It should just flow. If I have to schedule it, then man, I don't even want it. But the reality is, another way of looking at it is prioritizing sex. And the way that you prioritize sex is by taking the time to schedule it. And so Danielle and I have done this for years. I mean, we live busy lives. We have 4 children. We have a ministry that's international. We have a business. We're working with many people. Sometimes we're in sessions till 1, 2 in the morning, literally. And so we already know, okay, it's not going to happen on this day, can't happen on that day. So where can we squeeze in space and opportunity to come together? Because coming together is important and essential. And if we just get too busy and all of a sudden have no time for it this week, one week leads to another week, which leads to another week, and before you know it, a month has gone by and you haven't come together. So scheduling time is critically important, because in that process, it will build up anticipation. It will build up excitement and get you guys ready to go. These are the things that you guys have to begin to do to shift things in a better direction in your life and in your marriage. All right, so we have LaEbony. What to do? I'm always initiating and my husband doesn't, so I feel insecure and think that he doesn't want me because he has pursued other women during our marriage. What can I do? Yeah, this is why this goes to the last point. Being able to have conversations. It's so critically important that you take the time to unpack what's really going on. And what I would say is having conversations when you've created a safe environment for the conversation to happen. A lot of times in our frustration, in our anger, in our desperation, because many of us live quiet lives of desperation, we say things and we do things and we react emotionally. And in those spaces, it may shut our spouse down and they're not willing to open up and talk. But when we can learn to create a safe environment, we're able to dig a little bit deeper. Another thing you can do is bringing someone else into the conversation. And that's why you have a counselor or a coach or a therapist to kind of help you deal with these issues. Maybe there's some deeply rooted issues that speak to the issue, but your spouse doesn't feel safe sharing it with you alone. They need a third partner or party to help guide them through a process for the truth to come out in a palatable way that does not trigger, but allows the truth to come out. A lot of times people lie, they deceive, they omit the truth, they minimize, they rationalize, they justify not being completely honest for the sake of protecting their spouse's feelings, when that's the last thing that they're seeking. They're seeking an answer, they're seeking the truth, they're seeking understanding. And when you deny them of that, it creates more problems in the relationship. So I would say, as it relates to initiating and feeling wanted and desired, it's critically important to begin to engage in conversations. You know, one of the most powerful tools that we have, and we mentioned this early in the show, I'll pull it back up for just a second, is a book that we wrote, and it's Pillow Talk. If you look at the bottom right, Pillow Talk, 50 questions for extraordinary sex. I can't tell you how powerful it is that when we do intensives with couples, we give them about 90 minutes to 2 hours to have a sex conversation based upon the 50 questions that we have in there. And I would encourage you, get the book, because if you get the book, it will walk you through a series of different aspects of your sexuality that will help to give you clarity. You will learn something in the process, and you'll probably be able to elevate the level of your sexual relationship. So that would be my advice for you. Do we have another question? Also, I'm more like the male and he's more like the female, meaning I'm always ready and he has to be emotionally prepared. Well, let me just blow up that myth right now. A lot of factors weigh in on sexuality and emotions attached to it. Generally speaking, it can be said that men have a greater sexual desire and women desire more in order to get them ready to go to have sex. And generally, there's a lot of truth to that. But, truth be told, based upon age and maturity, based upon the type or nature of the relationship, oftentimes men need to feel emotionally ready to engage in sex because, there's so many different types of scenarios. Like just like a woman says, you know what? If you create the right environment and make it conducive, if you care, if you show that you are interested, if you show compassion, if you give me time and attention, if you penetrate my heart, you can then penetrate my body, right? So in essence, her sexual need isn't sexual. In that case, it's more emotional. Well, likewise, there's many men who feel the same way. There are many men who complain about their wives and how verbally abusive they are, how they feel attacked, beat up, put out, told off, and yet now we're supposed to have sex? Like, I'm not even in the mood to have sex. You just read me my rights. You just told me that I was a no good man. You just called me out of my name, and now you want me to be sexual with me? I'm turned off. My wall is up. And then others, they desire more intimacy. And so when they feel comfortable and safe, they open up sexually. So I think it's true that in a general sense, or maybe in the past it's been true, that men are ready to go in 2.3 seconds flat and women require a whole lot more. But now we're seeing that it's pretty balanced across the board. And if that's not the reason, there could be other factors involved in terms of why someone just doesn't want to have sex, which we can speak to on another show when dealing with alternate sexualities and things of that nature. All right, Clarence says, I just talked about this subject this morning with my wife, not knowing what your subject was going to be. I want to take that as confirmation. Yes. Now, I don't know what aspect of the conversation you were having with your wife, but I think it's important that we have these conversations. And if this show gives you confirmation, then amazing. It's a conversation that we need to continue to have, because the truth is, sex is one of those things that we love to do but hate to talk about, because when we talk about it, it reveals our insecurities, our vulnerabilities, our inadequacies, our fears, our anxieties. And so this is why we say it's important to create a safe environment in order for you guys to get to the next level of your marriage. Sex is what we're talking about today. I hope that you got something out of this particular topic. We have more and more and more we're going to be talking about, especially in the year to come regarding this topic, because it's an issue that many people are struggling with, and we want to make sure that we're hitting you exactly where you need to be. Listen, guys, thanks for tuning in. We got 2 more days before the big day, so we got 2 more shows for you. We're going to be taking a break between Christmas and the New Year so that we can regroup and help create a better experience on the Couples Academy show.
Welcome to the Couples Academy app. The Couples Academy app is your go-to hub for how to do marriage right. Get started with our app today by perusing our amazing features that conveniently allow you to connect. This app is packed with powerful content and resources to help you grow and stay connected. With this app, you can watch our messages, find marriage resources, watch, listen, and read the real-life stories of restored couples, sign up for events, read articles and blog posts, stay up to date with push notifications, share your favorite messages via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email, and download messages for offline listening. For more information about the Couples Academy app, go to couplesacademy.org.
going on.
I'm like, I could be like primping and getting makeup on, and he has got me on live.
We on live. We on Facebook Live. We're on YouTube Live. We are on Instagram Live. This is Couples Academy Live. Hey guys, hope all is well. Danielle's back in the saddle again. She's been gone for the last 3 days, but
I was not feeling well.
back.
You know what? Real talk. Like, this is a message for everybody. When you need to take it down because you're not feeling well, please take it down. Like, this is why we have sick days. This is why we call out from work. And sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, you really don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't take the time that you need. So make sure you take the time that you need. If you need to take a day off for sleep, or if you're not feeling well, make it happen.
Yes. Well, you're back, and we're glad you're back.
Glad to be back.
And if you don't know, if you're on Instagram Live, every single morning around 8:30, 8:45, we come on and we give great content for couples.
Yeah.
Whether you are dating, in a committed courtship, engaged, or married, we have information that we believe will be very impactful for you.
Right.
And so we're excited because...
And I want to say we have 2 cameras going today. So we might be looking up and we might be looking down, just FYI, because Instagram is on the phone behind the computer. So just so that y'all don't think that we've lost our mind or anything like that. Today's topic
is an important topic. You know, oftentimes when people come to us for counseling, this is what they're doing. They're pointing the finger. And as we've said, when you point the finger at your partner, there are always 3 fingers pointing right back at you. So you have to look at yourself 3 times as hard as you do your partner. We believe that the lowest common denominator in every single relationship that you enter into is you, because you take you everywhere you go.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of times we go from one bad relationship to another bad relationship to another bad relationship, and we're pointing the finger and not realizing, wait a minute, I brought me into all these relationships. I'm the common denominator. Let me do a check to evaluate myself, because there may be something going on with me. So today's topic is, your spouse is not your problem. You are your problem.
Woo!
Can I say that again? Your spouse is not your problem. You are your problem. So we're going to talk about the stuff, the drama, the idiosyncrasies, the challenges, the vices, all the character flaws that we carry, that we bring into the relationship. And then we look at our spouse through that lens.
It's interesting because we're always talking about what we bring into the relationship because of our family marinade, which is our background, like how we were raised and what influences from our mother and our father and our family, our siblings, uncles, aunties, all of that have contributed to your personality and why you do things.
Sonia said, Jesus.
However, there's more to it than meets the eye. There are also personality traits that you were just born with, that are inbred into you. It's who you are through and through. And a lot of times in relationships, we just don't know what those personality characteristics are. And so, but what they are is, it is a lens that shapes how you see the world and how you move against the world. And when you have certain issues, little idiosyncrasies that have hindered you along the way, you start to do things and build up barriers and defenses to move against them in your life. And it shows up in your relationship in crazy ways.
That's right. So let's dive in, because a lot of us are on the crazy train, the crazy cycle, and we need to really get unstuck. So one of the biggest problems that most couples struggle with, obviously, number one, communication. And everybody's always accusing their partner of not being able to communicate. But the fact is, you have issues with the way that you communicate. And, you know, in the book, The Audacity of Marriage, 10 Principles to Lifelong Partnership, you know, we have a chapter entitled Help, My Mouth is Killing My Marriage.
Yeah.
And that book really was, I mean, it's a self-help book, but that particular chapter was really a novel. Not a novel. It was a biography, in essence. I was sharing about my experience in the marriage in terms of my communication. And we all have communication issues. We all have something different. But a lot of times, whatever issue you have, you bring it in, and it heightens the intensity of the conversations. And oftentimes things get in the way to prevent you from resolving conflict. And so we talk about the verbal assassin. Some of you are just verbal assassins. In essence, you are hitmen who know how to use the power of your words to kill and to destroy the self-esteem, the value of your partner, and really destroy your relationship. So whether you are a yeller, some people are just yellers, like their energy is on 10. And because they don't tone down, it's just like they become so offensive in the way that they communicate. Then you have people who will curse you out from sun up to sundown because that's just who they are. And it's just like, can we have a respectable conversation? No, mother effing. And it's just like they just go on a tirade. And those type of harsh words cannot help a relationship. Then you have people who will call you out of your name. They have no problem calling you out of your name and everything but a child of God. And let me tell you something. It's like, I've heard people say, well, I didn't call you stupid. I said what you're doing is stupid. But wait a minute. In essence, that is a slick way of calling somebody stupid. And so when you begin to accuse people, hey, and good morning from Kenya, and wherever you are in right now, whatever country you're in, whatever city
how are you?
Around the world, we want you to drop that in there. We want to know where you're dialing in from.
Kiara.
Typically, we have people from Japan and Nigeria and South Africa and the States and the Caribbean, all throughout the Americas, from North America, Central and South. So we're glad to have you on. How about lecturers? People who just lecture on and on and on and on and never get to a point where they're done. And before you know it, 45 minutes are in and they're still talking.
When you think about how we all communicate, we came from homes that taught us exactly how to do that. If you came from a quiet home and nobody was yelling, you don't yell, but that doesn't mean that you don't argue and have your ways of disrespecting, using your body language, stonewalling, shutting people down. Our communication is so key, how we do it. And when we understand how our spouse needs to be spoken to in order to receive, we can move differently. Because what ends up happening, as a yelling, I come from yelling. I had a loud house. I had 3 brothers. It was loud all the time. My mother yelled, they yelled, we all yell. So I talk yelling most of the time. Hassan's just like, because I'm just loud. I answer the phone, hello? And everybody's just like, I'm just loud. Right. So yelling doesn't shut me down at all. But for some people, yelling completely shuts them down. They no longer can communicate. And then they go into their negative communication style. And if that means stonewalling you and shutting you out, walking away, no response whatsoever, then that's how they'll begin to respond. And what we need to understand about communication is that it's about being heard. If at the end of the day, all I want to do is be heard and understood, then I'm going to think about that and I'm going to monitor how I communicate to keep the channels open with who I'm communicating to. If I know calling you outside your name is going to shut you down and now you can't even hear anything I said past that, then what good is it?
It's not good at all. And guess what? The one thing we haven't talked about, which is really one of the most important techniques in communication, listening. Like you just said, people want to be heard, right? That requires that you take the time to listen, because what happens is when your spouse is talking to you, rather than you having compassion, and we talked about compassion, what does that mean? That means seeing with someone else's eyes, hearing with someone else's ears, and feeling with someone else's heart. Rather than bringing empathy and compassion into the relationship, what happens is you are building up a defense. You already have in your mind what you're going to say, and it just becomes like a double dutch, and you're going back and forth, and now it becomes a battle of the wits. And so you're not hearing each other, you're not digesting what each other is saying, you're just trying to get your points in, because at the end of the day, it's about you trying to be right.
Hey, Instagram, I can't see all the names, but I see some amens in there, and I see some hellos. So hey to Instagram. I just don't want to leave them out.
We don't want to leave them out. You're here with us.
And hey, I see Charles on here. Hey, let's just give some people some hellos. Hey there, Charles.
Hey, Charles. Good to see
Rhonda,
you.
Good seeing y'all.
Rhonda from Roanoke,
Good
Virginia.
morning. Hey, Christopher.
Rory.
Good seeing you.
Kiara Montgomery. Good to see you, sis. Right. We must realize that because we learn that behavior doesn't mean the behavior is right. We must create a communication style that works best for the marriage.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
And so listening, effective listening, meaning, for instance, Danielle, just look at me and start talking to me.
Hey, Sonny, what you got going on today? You wanna go for a walk later?
Yeah. Okay.
Can we get a dog?
Yeah, sure. Whatever you want.
Yeah. Amen.
Wait, what? Wait a minute. Dog. No. We are not getting a dog.
You said I could get a dog.
I didn't hear you.
We're getting a dog,
because I wasn't
y'all.
listening. I was multitasking.
If anybody knows any good boxer breeders or...
Can we edit out this part of this live? But if I'm multitasking, if I'm looking through my phone, if I'm typing on the computer, watching television, not giving you full on attention, not giving you eye to eye contact, then I'm not, number one, effectively listening.
Yes.
And I'm not engaging in listening that lets you know that I'm acknowledging what you're saying.
Right.
So when your partner's talking to you and you shake your head, okay, yeah, I get that. So what you're saying is,
Mm-hmm.
all right, yeah, because I was thinking. That is active listening.
Yeah.
That is something that you are
Right.
engaged in.
And if you know
works.
that your spouse constantly does not active listen, don't try to trick them by trying to get stuff out of them like I just did. No, we are getting that dog.
Kimberly, we are not. There is no dog.
Is
Sorry,
Kim on there?
not
Is
happening.
Kim on there?
Not getting the dog. Anyway,
Yes,
let's
we
go to the
are.
next comment. When you're having communication in a conversation, what happens when the person listens and understands but does not want to even touch on changing, or even when they use "if you can trust me, then you shouldn't be here" card.
If you can't
trust me, you shouldn't be here card.
Well, you got to prove yourself to be trustworthy. That's number one. Okay. So, as it relates to somebody who's unwilling to change and who doesn't feel like that they need to do anything to make sure that they're trustworthy, that's a whole problem in itself. And this is why we are talking about, you can't point the finger at your spouse when 3 fingers are pointing back at you. The only thing you can do is work on you and build up you so that now you are strong enough to make decisions, because you can't change that person, right? They have to change that person. And this is why when you build up strong enough, because we operate with a lot of weaknesses and we're not even aware we're operating with weaknesses, right? You pulling on me? Sorry. Yeah. And we're not aware that we're operating with these weaknesses that allow our spouses to maneuver and treat us certain kinds of ways. They know you ain't gonna do nothing. They know your ways about doing things. They know your routines. And when you shift up and change your routine, it makes them shift up and change their routine.
Absolutely. Let's see what the comments are saying. Kara, guilty of shutting down in 2.3 seconds. Some people do that.
Yeah.
Shutting down, that could be an example of stonewalling. Like if I'm the one who's throwing the stones and throwing the big bricks and all, Danielle's become an expert of grabbing those stones that I would throw and build up this wall and would shut down and would end the conversation in 2.3 seconds.
Yeah. And it was a protection maneuver, because when you have somebody that's constantly criticizing, right? And I just talked about that. Maneuver different, right? Maneuver different. So I was like, okay, bet you. I got you. I can catch these stones. I'm going to build a wall around myself with these stones so that your stones or your sticks cannot hurt me. And that's really what I was doing.
That's right. Let's go to the next comment. Right. We must realize that because we learn that behavior doesn't mean that behavior is right. We must create a communication style that works best for the marriage. And that's true. And what works for one relationship is different than what works for another. Mm-hmm. And you have to figure out what works for because listen, we don't have the problem of talking slow and trying to get to a point. But some people have that struggle. Maybe we don't have the problem of name calling and cursing, but some of the couples have that struggle. So whatever it is that you're dealing with, whatever your issue is, listen, the laws of success are built into the DNA of your relationship. If it's not working, stop doing it. If it does work, do it. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the next comment. We have to respect each other when communicating. Communication takes hard work. You better believe it. You have to be patient and listen to hear and understand instead of listening to respond. I couldn't have said that more better myself.
Hey, Janice.
And so when you have effective communication, what happens is you are able to emotionally connect. Mm-hmm. When you don't have effective communication, it creates a major disconnect. Mm-hmm. So your spouse is not your problem. Your communication is your problem. Let's go to the second one. Your spouse is not your problem, but your sins or your shortcomings are your problem. Listen, the fact of the matter is, Danielle does a phenomenal job of unpacking personality styles, but oftentimes we come into the relationship with our own fears, anxieties, phobias. We come in with our own assumptions and perspectives, and now we're looking at you through particular lenses that may not be accurate. Mm-hmm. And so if I come in with trust issues, I don't trust you, not because it's something that you've done, but it's something that I'm carrying possibly from a past relationship. And this is why we say it's important that if you're entering into a relationship, that you have to go through a detox, getting your past partner out of your system, or going through a she-tox, getting that past partner out of your system, because you will hold on and bring some of the issues and idiosyncrasies of that past into your present and wind up holding your present partner hostage to past situations. So your own shortcomings oftentimes get in the way. What about your anger? Like if you have anger issues, that's going to really impact the foundation of your relationship. Nothing your partner did, but because you can't control your emotions, now all of a sudden we're in a bad place. But you want to be mad at that. Like you're mad at every single thing your partner does, but the issue of anger exists within you.
Right. Well, what if you also have all that going on and then your partner does something to exasperate your issues, which happens a lot of times in what we do. See, we come in here with issues and then we suppress them as best as we can, and we really hide them, and they're not as much of an issue in the relationship while things are good. We also have this, enormous amount of grace that we extend to one another, that we saw the problems from the very beginning, we overlooked them, or we thought, I'll fix that, or we can deal with that, or over time it'll get better. Then when somebody does one thing to break the trust or to disappoint, all that grace goes out the window, and we take the kid gloves off and we're showing our full hand, all our sins, all our issues, and are unwilling to roll that back. And that's now when you have exasperated all the issues. It's like, you know what, this is who I am, deal with me because you did that. And that's something that we usually have to work on couples with, because we have to get you back in your circle, recognizing that you are your problem. And I know that this person did hurt you. And I know that that was a breakdown in the trust and in the relationship, but we got to get you back in your circle, working on your stuff in order for the greater good of the relationship.
Now that's a great point, right? Because we carry stuff. Like, for instance, what if your partner does something that triggers you? What if your partner violates your trust, but you already have built within you trust issues?
It just
becomes extremely
That's literally
difficult.
Exactly what I said.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. You're exasperating the issue that's already there.
If you have a history and a habit of holding grudges, becoming bitter, and not forgiving, when your spouse does something wrong, it becomes almost impossible for you to forgive.
Right.
And though your spouse may do everything possible to restore their trust or to ask for forgiveness and to prove themselves to be, forgiven, if you struggle with forgiveness, then no matter what they do, it's not going to darn make a difference. And so what if you have addictions that you brought into the so there's all types of things that we bring in that we've got to be mindful of.
Janice says learning each other's trigger points help to avoid creating negative responses. Good point.
Very, very good point. We had another one. I've been guilty of reflecting on a past relationship and my current one because of some familiar behavior that they are doing. Yeah, and that does happen. A lot of times we enter in what we call rerun relationships, where we go from one person to the next in the same old stuff. Shutting down is a form of manipulation. Manipulation is a form of witchcraft.
Ooh,
wow, you didn't say something there.
Yes.
That's another topic for another time.
Janice says, my grandma gave me some advice, which I always remember. She told me building a relationship is like cooking a good dish. So in every relationship, learn to cook with new ingredients, because not everyone uses or like all the ingredients. So what worked in the one relationship may not work in another.
That is a fact.
That's great advice.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
So as we can see, your spouse is not your problem. Your sins or your shortcomings are your problem. The number 3, your expectations. We talk about this all the time.
Ooh,
you get married, you say I do. You come in with all of these ideas of what marriage is supposed to look like, what this relationship is supposed to be. And guess what? You all of a sudden become disappointed, not by your partner, but by your expectations, because they didn't live up to what you thought they should do or you wanted them to do. Yeah. But a lot of times you didn't even articulate them. You didn't clarify them. You didn't discuss them. And then that creates a problem.
Well, growing up in a single parent household, right, where I really didn't have a picture most of my life of 2 parents in a home, my perspective came from what I saw, right? So what I saw with my aunties and uncles, what I saw maybe in the Cosby Show, I don't know, but somewhere along the way, you gather these expectations of what marriage is going to look like. For many of you, you did gather your expectations inside your household with your 2-parent home. And even in that, you still do not know the whole picture. Our kids don't know the entire picture of our marriage. They don't know every single solitary detail. So who knew I was supposed to ask, do you believe in like fixing things? Are you an electrician? Do you know how to fix things? Can you cook? Will you cook? Like, there's a lot of expectations that I had. I needed Hassan to be cooking. I needed him to know how to use a screwdriver to change light bulbs and rewire the house. I needed him to be a mechanic and know how to fix everything in the car. Like, these were all the things that I had expectations about, because I saw my brothers doing things like that. it didn't dawn on me that not every man does the exact same things, and that for you to have proper expectations, you need to have conversations beforehand to determine how your marriage is going to flow.
There it is. And so we talk about this all the time. Like if that door is broke, certain people's knee-jerk reaction is grab a screw,
Can you go fix that door?
grab some nails. Other people's reaction is let me call someone because I have the means to do it because it's going to get done. So whether I'm doing it or somebody else is doing it, it's my responsibility to make sure it gets done. So sometimes you could be married to your method,
Yes.
or what you believe the method should be,
Or
and
just
that causes the
ideas,
conflict.
or ideas like, we all have ideas about what our expectation is. I mean, think about with women, we have these like long lists before we get married about who our Boaz is going to be. And he's got to be this height. He's got to make this money. He's got to have two, we have this long list. And then when it gets down to the nuts and bolts, it may or may not be that list, but we still have other expectations that we just have not articulated. So it's really about, number one, having a balanced expectation in the first place. That's number one. And then number two, having these discussions, going back to number one, communication.
Christopher said, I learned that you cannot give what you do not have.
Ooh,
There's
that's
some
so
truth to
true.
that.
No,
There's
there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us, we're in these relationships and we don't know how to give love, basic things like that, because we didn't receive it. Now you can learn these things, but not everybody has that. And that's the beauty of being in a relationship. And that's what I love about the Enneagram personality typing, which I became certified in because it was so powerful helping couples, is that a lot of times we don't know the box that we're in. We're in a box, all of us, okay? Even if you think about our countries, the United States is in its own box or bubble, right? The United Kingdom is in its own box and bubble. Every nation is in its own box and bubble based on what it knows and its rules and its guidelines and things like that. And so are we. And a lot of times we don't know about the box we're in. And so you need to come out of it so that somebody can explain to you your box, so that you understand how people see you in the world and how you're affecting people in your life, so that you can make changes. Then you can fill your cup up. Then you can say, okay, I'm lacking in empathy. Let me work on that, because to your point, you can't give empathy if you don't have it. I need to understand empathy. I need to understand communication styles. I need to see myself how others see me so that I can learn to be different.
Absolutely. Janice says, right. Same here, Danielle, but my husband doesn't like doing any of those things. I now learned to celebrate the things that he loves doing and let him do those things that and let him do the things he don't like doing the way he does it. Okay, awesome.
Amen to that.
Here we have, what do you do with the wolf in sheep's clothing? Well, what are you talking about? Talk about what you're talking about.
Right.
In what context are you saying that?
Re-ask that question,
Yeah,
Steph.
so I want to give you another chance to do that. We suffer from the microwave mentality expectations. I want what I want when and how I want it, and it doesn't work like that. That's
Absolutely true.
And that's why it's important to set proper expectations. And guess what? Expectations become proper when you begin to communicate and dialogue about them, and you begin to learn together what to do.
Yeah, Tia says, so true. Communication is key. You must make sure you are on the same page, or at least in the same book. That's a good point. At least in the same book.
So as we can see, your spouse is not your problem. Your expectations are your problem. Number 4, we want to talk about past traumas.
Ooh.
The reality is we weren't born on day 1 and married on day 2. We've had years and decades of experiences and situations and circumstances, and some of those things have been replete with traumas and molestations and abuse and things of that nature. And so there's trauma that we're carrying, baggage that we're carrying. We used to talk all the time about, before you get on the plane, what's the first thing you have to do?
Check your baggage.
Yeah. You got to check your baggage at the gate. You got to check your issues and your idiosyncrasies, all that stuff. Then you go through a radar system or device through the TSA, and they're scanning your person to make sure that there's nothing on your physical body that can cause harm to the other passengers on board. They want to know that you are in a healthy state in order to get on this plane, because other people will be impacted by your stuff. And oftentimes we look good on the outside, right? But on the inside, A lot of us are ugly. A lot of us are hurting. A lot of us are going through. We're toxic. We're dealing with all types of issues. And we didn't take enough time to be alone and by ourselves to properly heal. And we bring that hurt into our next relationship, and it's full of trauma. So whether we're talking about abandonment issues, whether we're talking about a distorted view of love, think about it. Some people have seen things in the name of love that by definition don't constitute love. So now you'll stay in a relationship dealing with all types of things that you shouldn't deal with because you think is love, or the way in which you love is erroneous. It's wrong. So these are the challenges that people have. It's not your spouse, but it's your own past traumas. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I had a thought about the past traumas. You know, when you think about, we all have some kind of trauma in the past, but I do hear people say, man, I didn't really have that rough an upbringing. I didn't really go through anything, but everyone has something. It's actually what we call in Enneagram, the grain of sand, right? So when you think about a pearl, when a grain of sand gets under the clam, the clam starts to cover it with a substance called mother of pearl. And it just keeps coating it and coating it and coating it. And by the end of it, it has a beautiful pearl inside the clam, but nobody knows what that grain of sand is, right? So it's this agitation that shapes our personality. But what we need to do, and I always wish that people would really take counseling serious before they get into marriage to deal with their own stuff, because that's where you get to unearth what's in that pearl. You're the pearl, right? But what is the issue? What is the grain of sand that causes you to have so much pain, so much resentment, distorted thinking, crazy ideas? Like, what is it? And if you can unearth that and deal with that before you get into a marriage and pair up with somebody, at least you won't be dealing with your past stuff. At least you'll be dealing with current stuff, because we all have so many phases in life. And it's unfortunate to talk to someone who's grown, who's still blaming mommy and daddy, and mommy and daddy haven't had an influence in your life in like 40 years, right? Now you've got a whole bunch of other influences, things that you have done, mistakes that you have made, relationship stuff, all this other trauma that's just piled on top of your grain of sand. So we need to take counseling seriously and really begin to embrace counseling, because it can make do wonders for your overall life. And then obviously that would empower your relationship.
And we're Couples Academy. And maybe you need some personal individual work. Maybe you're going through in your relationship and you've been trying to figure this thing out on your own. You'll read a book, you'll watch a video and say, let's do this. But there are missing pieces. There are elements that you have not incorporated. And to have a third party, someone who has been through it and someone who's helped other couples through it, is critically important. So you'll notice down on the screen, it says, visit couplesacademy.org, set up a free discovery call. If you're on Instagram Live, it doesn't say that, but simply go to couplesacademy.org, set up a free 15-minute discovery call, and let's talk through some things and let's figure out what we can do to help you heal. Now, listen, let's go to the next one. Your spouse is not the problem. The problem is you are just unhappy with yourself. A lot of times you're unhappy with your spouse. You're unhappy with the relationship. But the fact is you are unhappy with you. And there are many of you who are struggling with low self-esteem, always have. There are many of you who have a poor image of your body. You have self-esteem issues. You just don't love yourself. You don't like yourself. In fact, we're working with couples currently right now. And the truth is, when we're dealing with the individual, they have this negative, pessimistic view of themselves, very low self-esteem. And then they wonder why they can't show up in their relationship the way they want to. And so their spouse is constantly encouraging and constantly motivating, constantly being like a therapist in the relationship, trying to build them up. And that can become draining. It
can become an impossible feat, because if you're trying to fill up somebody's cup who that has a hole in it, right? And they never did the work to fill their own hole, then that your spouse can pour in and tell you how wonderful you are all they want, and you'll never be able to receive it. And that is something that I've seen show up in certain specific personality types that actually struggle with comparisons. Right. So they're always comparing themselves to someone else to determine their own self-worth and value. And that's an issue. And that's something also that can be worked out and strengthened.
This is a powerful one. What about one who caused the trauma, wants to forget about it, and also wants you to forget about it? Their way of dealing with it is not dealing with it. That's true. A lot of times the trauma happens in the relationship, And guess what? If I've hurt you, the last thing I want to do is think about it, talk about it, dwell on it, have conversations about it. I'm trying to push it in my past. I'm trying to forget it.
I mean, we see it all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
If I'm guilty of a violation, think about it. We see this all the time. Like, sometimes there's pain associated with the hurt and the harm you've caused. And a person is trapped in their own guilt and shame. And the last thing they want to do is be reminded about their guilt and shame. So they suppress it and push it down. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work for the person who's been the violator. It doesn't work for the person who's been violated. And this is exactly why you cannot do this on your own. You get on a plane. Imagine being on a plane and saying, you know what? I think I want to get in the policy and drive this. You will crash. You don't have the skills or the mechanics or the understanding of how to fly a plane. You need a pilot guiding you. Couples who attempt to do things on their own is equivalent to flying a plane. 90% of your journeys off course, you need somebody there to help you through. You need somebody there to help you with your marital recovery and with your individual recovery to get you to a better place.
Yeah, I mean, you can make for sure. You can make some small, tiny steps by yourself. I hear people that take time say, you know, I'll read a self-help book. I'll do this on my own. And those things are great. And those things will help you. But when you need to go to the next level, when you need to make quantum level success leaps forward, you need a coach. And you need a coach in every industry of life. There are business coaches, fitness coaches, all kinds of mental health coaches, life coaches, marriage coaches. And so if you want to make quantum level leaps, you need a coach to lead you the way.
Yeah, Chris is making a good point. There's truth in it. We have to admit when we have a problem personally and stop it using excuses to blame our partners and shortcomings on our spouse. It should never be that I did this because you or how you treated me. We have to be responsible as individuals for what we do. I think there's truth in that, and it's true. You have to own your stuff. I will say that in relationships, our partners can contribute to what we do. And a lot of times couples get back into that tit for tat. You did this, I did that. I think there's a dance, there's a chemistry, whether good or bad. There's a way, a style and a pattern of the way people operate in relationships. And oftentimes that's what happens. So yeah, you do have to absolutely own your own stuff, but you also have to make sure that the dynamics of the relationship are healthy. So we're not constantly triggering each other and setting each other up for failure. So your spouse is not your problem. The fact that you're not happy with yourself is your problem. Let's go to the next one. We got two more. Your spouse is not your problem. Number 6, but your conditions are your problem. Now, this is an important one. And we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. But the truth is, there are people who are suffering with anxiety. There are people who are suffering with depression. But they're bipolar. Maybe they're struggling with PTSD. Maybe they have mood disorders, obsessive compulsive behaviors. Maybe you've been diagnosed or have not been diagnosed, but there's some serious issues and concerns within yourself, and that impacts how you show up in your relationship. And so if those things aren't worked on, and that's why we say one of the things that we help couples through is their individual recovery process. But then there's things that we're not necessarily qualified to do. You need to go to a therapist, somebody who specializes in that type of thing, to help you cope with your own issues. Because I will say the recovery process for one couple is different than another. And a lot of it has to do with the individual's ability to manage and deal with stresses and crises and the way that they just respond in general.
Yeah.
And so that is an issue that requires self-work.
Yeah, mental health is a serious issue inside marriages. And it's actually really going through the roof right now in general. People are really struggling with mental health, especially anxiety and depression right now. And so all of this can affect your relationship. But in addition to things like mental health, there's also drug addiction that plays a major part in your relationship, sexual addictions that play a major part in your relationship. And so this is not something at all. If you think that you can handle that on your own, you are sorely mistaken. That is where you need to go and get some serious help. So a therapist to help you work through those things and to work through that issue inside your relationship, because these things can be very dangerous and detrimental to your life and to your health.
That's right. We have another comment here. It says, we will pay to get our cars taken care of, but won't pay to take care of ourselves. We are important. So very true.
That's what I said at the top of the show, my friend, because I've been gone for 2 days because I needed to take care of myself.
There it is.
And if we could learn that, I think women probably do better with taking care of ourselves than men do. But if we can learn how important it is to know when our body is calling us to sleep, to rest, to take some medicine, then we need to do that.
Absolutely. Steph came back to clarify, having had all those wonderful conversations and thinking that you were on one accord, only to discover decades later that your spouse was the wolf or chameleon living two different and separate lives.
Wow.
Yeah, that definitely is a problem. It's so interesting. I'm working with someone now, and they said, you know what? They thought their relationship was wonderful until they found out that the first 9 years he was in multiple affairs, and then once the discovery came out, that's when everything started to go down in terms of communication, interaction, all those types of things. And so it's important, to your point, that you live a life of transparency.
Yeah.
If you discover that there is a major altering, life-changing thing happening in your marriage because the veil was pulled out, now you're seeing that this person has a different life. We've dealt with that. People literally had families, you know, spouses, maybe not spouses, but long-term partners and children and all types of things just miles down the road.
Oh, yeah.
And then you find out years later that could tremendously impact you. And so this is why we say when these type of things occur, you need help processing through what to do with it.
I think everybody who's experienced infidelity feels like that, Steph. I feel like they all feel like they were married to a wolf in sheep's clothing. So, because when I read the question, it was like, well, what if? I think that is the if for everyone who's experienced infidelity. It's just like, who am I married to? I thought that they were this and they were that, and there's that whole discovery process. And so what I want to say to that is that doesn't mean that it's an irrevocable situation. This is something that can be remedied just like anything else. And there are issues within that relationship that need to be unearthed in that person. And now you get on the journey to find those things out.
All right, very good. So we've been talking about your communication, your sins and shortcomings, your expectations, your past trauma, you being unhappy with yourself. We've been even talking about your personal conditions. Now, here's the last one. Your spouse is not your problem, but your ignorance is your problem. Wow. Listen, one of the Bible even says that where there is no vision, the people will perish, right? But it also says for a lack of knowledge, the people will be destroyed for a lack of knowledge. So there's got to be some knowing. The Bible says that wisdom is the principal thing, and to get wisdom, and in all thy getting, get an understanding. Mm-hmm. And so you have to have a certain knowledge of a few things. Number one, you got to know yourself. A lot of times we are completely unself-aware. We're not conscious of who we really are. Mm-hmm. Number two, we don't know our partner. We don't understand relationships. I think that it's important that we increase our relational IQ. Get a book, tune in every single morning, learn what it takes to make relationships work, because the more knowledgeable you are about relationships in general, you know what to bring into your relationship. And then you have to be consciously aware of the opposite sex. As a man, I need to understand women in general so I can better understand my wife. She needs to understand men in general so she could better understand me. Because I think that what we try to do when we get into relationships, we want our spouses to be just like us, think just like us, be wired just like us. And God did not create us to be the same. He created us uniquely different. And the Bible, if marriage is God's first institution and he created it, then shouldn't we go to the word to understand what gender means, what marriage means, what roles and responsibilities of a spouse in a relationship means? It's all there. I heard somebody say that most Christians are biblically illiterate when it comes to what the Bible says about marriage. And we have our own ideas, our own concepts, our own biases, just beliefs that we've accumulated along the way that do not serve us. And once you increase your awareness and your knowledge and your IQ, it will significantly enhance your relationship.
My turn?
Your turn. Jump in there.
Because I didn't really have nothing to add to that. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I mean, you know, I think you could put that stamp ignorance on so many areas of life, right? If you don't know what you don't know. So it's time to get busy learning. And the fact that you're a part of the Audacity of Marriage group and Couples Academy speaks that you are willing to learn. So keep showing up and step up. And when there's opportunities to participate, when you see master classes taking place, join the masterclass, become a professional at being married, just like you would at anything else if you want to be successful.
There it is. So guys, we appreciate you. Glad that you join us every single morning. Today Friday?
Yes, it's Friday.
You know what? Friday is the day that we're supposed to do questions and answers.
Oh, right.
But you've been gone for a couple of days, and I wanted to make sure that we got this topic in. Just know that generally speaking, on Fridays, it's open lines. We answer any questions that you may have, even those on Instagram Live. We're going to start incorporating you into this conversation a lot more regularly. But hopefully this was some good information that you could take into your weekend. You can have conversations with your spouse. And listen, real talk. Go to your spouse, apologize. Apologize for being wrong. Apologize for your shortcomings. Apologize for not getting it right. Apologize for always looking at them and not taking the time to really look at yourself. Apologize for your communication style. Apologize for your sins and shortcomings. Apologize for your unrealistic expectations. Just know that you are a work in progress. There's a song that says, it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my mother, not my father, but me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. I'm not a singer. But the point is, when you focus on you and you focus on becoming the best you that you can be, it will help you to have the best relationship that you can have. Listen, guys, you see it down.
Hey, Benita, welcome.
At the bottom.
You.
People are still coming in. It's good to see you. But set up a free discovery call. Go to couplesacademy.org. I get texts. Danielle gets texts, emails, people wanting help. And the first question I say was, did you go to the website? Oh, at the website? No, haven't been. Go to the website.
Yeah.
See what it is that we're doing. See how we can help you so that when we get on that call, we're operating from a premise of you understanding what it is that you want and how we can serve you. And we are here. God has positioned us to make impact on this world in the area of marriage and family. So take advantage. Love you guys. And we will see you on Monday morning. Bye. Take care, guys.
Welcome to another episode of Couples Academy Live. Today we're talking about why we lie, a lover's web of deception. Join us now.
But good morning. My name is Hassani.
I'm Danielle.
And we are Couples Academy. And if this is your first time joining us, listen, Couples Academy Live is a daily program. We come on every single morning to give you power-packed information that will help transform your life. We are in a series. We've been talking about why we lie. So on yesterday, we really got into some preliminary things that I think stirred up a great conversation. But we want to go to the next level. We want to go deeper because there is, beyond surface reasons, there's like a deeply embedded psychological, chemical, biological, I'm making up words, reasons for why we do what we do, which speaks to the core of our humanity. And some people have a predisposition to lie, but others are not self-aware of their own lies.
Actually, everybody has a predisposition to why you would lie, right? Some of us actually tend to lie on the regular because we're just straight up liars, right? But all of us have a reason why we would lie. And they all vary for different reasons. And some of us actually have the same reason why we're doing it, or we're doing the same action, but for different reasons. Some of us have similar reasons, right? So we're going to jump into that and break it down for you because I think it's going to be really useful. We're always talking about personality, style, typing, what is your number? and why it's so important to know your number. How you engage in the world makes all the difference based on your number. So we want to jump into that.
And we just want to say good morning to our family. Calvin, good morning.
Hey, Calvin.
Stephen, Tina, Tiffany, Yvette,
Hey.
Sifso,
Hey, Tina. Hey.
Renard, JD. Good to see you guys. Listen, we're going to start off. I came across a very, very powerful video that really talks about the lies we tell ourselves, because technically, if you're lying to your partner, it may be because you're lying to yourself. Check this out.
I wasn't telling my wife what I was feeling. That led me to cheat. Why did I cheat? I cheated because I couldn't even have a real conversation with my wife. I couldn't tell her what I was actually feeling. So it seemed in my mind, being a liar, that it made sense to disconnect emotionally from my wife and go emotionally connect with other women, which then led to physical intimacy. To go that direction, then to actually have the courage to just look at my wife and say, here's what I'm feeling and here's where I'm at. Like, this is what I'm going through right now. And I, instead, it was, then it was,
drinking, alcohol, smoking.
to try to deal with the guilt and the shame. And so I was always uncomfortable at some level inside. I was uncomfortable with the fact that I don't know if this is, I can't be all of me with you. Because if you knew this other part of me, you would never do business with me. If my wife knew what I was saying over here, she would leave me for sure. If my I was constantly trapped as a businessman in this place of not being able to be me. So I became a story, a fiction to everyone. And in that I became a liar to myself. And I got tired of it. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so I quit.
You quit being you.
I quit being me that I had told everyone. And I realized I didn't have any money. I had no relationships, no networks, I had nothing. So I was like, okay, the only thing I do have, the truth. Okay. And the cost of having the truth is to stop lying.
What a powerful, powerful video. Man. As infidelity recovery specialists, oftentimes we try to get to the why of the affair. What was the root cause? What was the reason? But at the end of the day, I think he articulated it so well. The reason why he cheated is because he could not have an honest conversation with his wife. So interestingly enough, just working with a couple on last night, one of the struggles is my external dialogue that I'm having with my wife is one thing, but my internal dialogue that I'm having with myself is something different. So when I'm feeling some type of way, I don't articulate it. When I'm going through a struggle, I give a false impression. So my spouse could be completely oblivious to what it is that's going on inside of me. And because I haven't developed the proper communication skills, I disconnect from my spouse, connect with other people, and then that starts the slippery slope. Or I don't feel comfortable having an honest conversation with my spouse because of all the things that my spouse may do, self-righteousness, high expectations, a demand for this, not creating a safe environment. The point is there's a breach, there's a breakdown. And beyond affairs, it's not even about that. The point is, in this video, he couldn't be honest with her. He couldn't be honest with himself. And he held on to his own lies. He held on to his own story. Yeah. And when we have a story in our minds and we play it again and again and again, we cement it in our psyche. Yeah. And believe
and that was his choice. The interview is a lot longer than that, and I love watching it because he's finally being transparent about what he was truly feeling, and now he's no longer living that lie. But all that time, he's in this relationship with somebody who he chose not to express how he's feeling. I'm always saying this. This is one of the most frustrating things about dealing with couples who have experienced infidelity. my question is always like, why couldn't you just be honest and come to your spouse and say, this is what's going on with me. This is how I'm feeling. Let's work it out. But instead, in that video, he holds his mouth. He says nothing. Many of us on this call can say, I know what that looks like, that shutdown, where they're not communicating.
The shutdown.
You know something's on their mind. You know something's not right, yet they're not saying it. You had the feeling the entire time. Nothing was said, and then it comes out later. And this happens in all areas, just in plain out communication. We're failing to express how we truly feel, and we move into imagination. And that's where it all begins. We start, because we can't talk to each other, because I can't express to you exactly how I'm feeling, that I'm having, that I saw somebody at work and I was attracted to that person, and it hit me like I didn't choose it. I just saw that person and I felt sexual tension. That stuff we never tell each other, even though we're human. So we need to be able to come to each other with this honesty, instead of allowing these thoughts to circulate in our minds, where we create a fantasy that we now act on that instead of opening up to our spouse.
Wow, that speaks volumes, and it really ties into what Angel's saying. She says, wow, communication is everything. My husband actually told me he didn't want to tell me things because he thinks I would leave him. What do I do with that?
Wow.
And so it speaks to...
And that's the fear.
Yeah,
That's
there's
the
a fear.
If you knew what I was really thinking, you would not
Yeah.
stick around, or you would be very judgmental.
So when we do the masterclass on communication next Saturday, we're going to be talking about how to create a safe environment for these type of conversations to take place. Because when you have an area of safety, you're willing to be more vulnerable and open up and take calculated risks, because you know that there aren't going to be any consequences for the truth that you share.
Yeah.
Jeremy says, that's what happened to me. I told her the truth about how I was truly feeling, but it's too late. We're getting a divorce. That's
too bad.
really unfortunate to hear. I would probably say in most cases, divorces don't occur because of one incident, because of one conversation, because of one epiphany. Oftentimes, there may be a string of things that have occurred that has led to that divorce, and that could have been the beginning of it or the tail end of it, which was the icing on the cake. But see, this is why communication is so critically important, so that couples can get beyond it. And in owning your truth and learning how to properly present the truth is what's critically important. People are commenting, for me, it is mainly because I want to protect her feelings, or just looking out for myself, especially during the time of my infidelity. But whatever the reason, the more the lies, the more the true foundation cracks. It means you will share less. You will be inevitably less intimate and tend to have less empathy and compassion. Since you have put off the old man, do not lie to one another. Colossians 3:9. Powerful, powerful, powerful. Because we do lie to protect ourselves or to not hurt our spouse's feelings. It's all types of reasons and rationalizations that build up such a strong desire to just not be honest. And if you get used to doing that, if that's your habit, the easier it gets.
It does. There's a powerful study that was done through at least 3 major universities. And basically they were doing a test to study the human nature and lying and those effects on the brains. They wanted to know, like, if you lie, does it change who you are? Do you actually become a liar? And so what they did is they had 2 groups, and one group had to be integral, and the other group had to constantly do things lacking in integrity. They had to keep lying. They knew they were lying. In the beginning of the study, the integral group, they were being integral. They were doing great. They were tracking that. The group that had to lie, they started out with small lies because they felt uncomfortable with the lie. But then as the project continued, and they were getting paid, so the more lacking integrity that they were, the more the study would pay them. So they started to find new ways to lie. They even went so far as to be able to throw the integral group under the bus because that would make more money. And they kept lying and lying. And so what it showed is that there was an actual change in the brain where when they tested both groups at the end of the study to see if they knew how to read emotions, right? They put them in front of a screen with actors. And they had the integral group read the emotions and tell us what's going on here. The integral group was able to read the emotions clearly. The group lacking integrity, without fail, they could not read the integrity. The more they lie, or read the emotions, the more they lied, the less able they were to read emotions. So their brains physically changed. So the more they lied, they became liars. Now think about that. Think about liars. If you ever know anybody who is just always lying about everything, they don't have integrity. You can't trust anything. They don't seem to know that you know they're a liar. Like they seem to not be aware that everybody knows that you're a liar. So there's some truth to that. You can see how the more you do it, the more numb you become, and you get comfortable with it.
The more emotionally numb you become, the more emotionally disconnected you become from your partner.
Think about that.
That's the breach. That's the breakdown. And it's like you just don't have the ability to do what was once natural to you because so basically what you're saying is bad behavior literally transforms the person from the inside out and they become someone completely different. That's why a lot of people say, I don't even recognize you anymore.
They become a liar. And that comes with so much stuff, deception and all the other things that you have to do to keep up with your lies. And here you are feeling more and more numb and thinking you're getting away with it and everybody sees you but you.
Wow. That we have a whole bunch of wows. Angel says wow. Sonia says wow. But a couple more comments. But what if, what if I share? Then it is held against you all the time. Next, there is when one opens up and the other is not open and pretends that they are perfect and all is well. This is what I'm saying. Like, this is what makes communication so challenging in relationships because we have all of our own idiosyncrasies that we bring to the table that creates the noise that gets in between a couple and makes conversation so difficult.
But I think it's important to acknowledge that the repercussions of your honesty should not determine your honesty because that is lacking integrity, right? So, going back to the video you just saw, he had these thoughts, he had these emotions, he had all this. He said, if I tell her, she'll leave me for sure. So instead of telling her and being honest and facing the music, right, you decide to lack integrity and begin to lie and live a false life. So you can't look at, okay, well, if I'm honest, then this is going to happen, so I'm going to lie. That's lacking integrity.
Yeah, it is. But you figure, wow, so there's something I want to tell. And if I tell this truth, the consequence of losing everything, losing my spouse, losing my family, losing my reputation, losing my...
Face the fear and do it anyway.
Fear oftentimes cripples us from operating in our integrity. And see, this is why it's so important that you begin to do the soul work on the inside. See, it's not just about how your spouse shows up, it's how you show up that's causing the problem.
And do you really know how that person is going to respond?
You don't.
You have these fears, like they're going to be so angry, they're going to be disappointed, I'm going to be a failure.
That's going to happen.
Right. Or they may say to you, well, because we're not just talking about infidelity. We're talking about in all instances, I made a mistake. I put money somewhere and I lost it all. So you're going to hide that from me, that you just lost our life savings. Maybe I would actually appreciate the fact that you humbled yourself and told me so that we could do this together. I can't tell you how many women say this, like, I'm your ride or die. I'm here with you. We've been through thick and we've been through thin. Like, why would you think now I would leave you? Why would you think now I wouldn't support you? We should have fought this together. Instead, you decided to take a solo journey.
And that's what he said. The stories I kept, I was addicted to my own stories. And the stories that I told myself created the isolation in my relationship. Many of you are really enjoying this. Listen, I want you to do something right now. I want you to share this. There's a community of people that you are a part of. You are the center of influence for so many others, and they need this information. Share it right now. Let them know that we're on live. Let's keep going into this because, listen, we want to talk about this from a personality perspective as well, because different personalities do different things in terms of this web of deception.
Well, I want to talk about the different types of lies because sometimes we're not even aware that we're lying. We're so suppressed and disconnected from what things are that we deny, right? So error, that's one reason why we lie. We actually just made a mistake. We said something that we thought was true at the time and it wasn't. And it was wrong. And that can happen because of exaggeration or the way that you perceived it happening, the way that you saw it from your lens, not having all the facts or all the details of the story to close all the loops. So there's lies of error.
Sure. But it's about correcting that mistake once you realize you've made it. Or if somebody points it out, acknowledging and saying, you know what, My bad. That's what I did. Let me get on the right track. But when you hold to the story and your ego and pride gets in the way and you don't course correct, that's when you start participating in habits that are hard to break. And then before you know it, you become that liar that you were just talking about.
And I think that's what it's all about. Like if you made a mistake, somebody came to you and said, you told me X, Y, and Z. So as a result, I did X, Y, and Z. That was a lie. You lied. It's like, whoa. Let me explain. Yes, it wasn't true. I found out that it wasn't true, or I thought that it was true. I think a lot of times we're in defense mode and we never will really acknowledge when we made a mistake. So we just hold to the lie.
Yes.
So that's a lie of error. And there are certain personality styles that can hold to that. 2s, 3s, and 4s can actually have the issue of lying through error because of a couple of things. They tend to exaggerate emotions. They tend to care so much about how they're being seen. So they've got that lens on, right? It's all in the box and in the bubble. So how am I being seen in this? How is this affecting me? And that's how they see in the world. And so that's how they can mistake. And interestingly,
Wow.
They're all in the same pearl, right? They're all how I'm seen type. I need to be seen as successful. I need to be seen as loving. I need to be seen as unique. So if that's the lens, it is quite possible it's easy for them to tell lies of error.
Wow.
Okay. Another lie, which we're so used to hearing, is the lie of omission. And that is when you are intentionally leaving out details.
Refusing to tell it all, because if I told everything, then it would get me in trouble. And we do this for ridiculous reasons, and sometimes things that we fear may happen. Like for instance, and we talk about this all the time, you've been gone for like an hour and a half. Where'd you go? Oh, I just went to the mall. Yeah, but you didn't. But where else did you go? There's no way that you could have been in the mall going to one store
Right.
for an hour and a half. You went in one store for an hour. Yeah, I was in one store for an hour. Yeah, but what you didn't tell is
Right.
what you did prior to, who you met up with at the mall. Like all
Or
the details,
whatever
the case.
yeah.
It's just a scenario.
Right.
But this is what we do. We don't tell it all.
Leaving out relevant information.
Yes.
Right? Because do I really need you to tell me all? Like, okay, I was going to the store. I stopped to get gas. I saw a pack of gum.
Depends on your situation.
I got,
Depends on what you're going through.
maybe it does. I got the extra pack. I got the extra type of gum. I walked out. My shoelace got caught in the door. I tripped. Somebody said, "You okay?" I said, "Yes." We don't need every detail of everything, but I want to know the relevant information. If I'm wondering, where have you been? It only takes 5 minutes to shop. The Kroger is only on the corner. What has taken you so long? Oh, well, I had also stopped at the post office. I went to the bank. That's what took up most of my time because I made a deposit. Because remember, give me the details so that I can close the loop so that I have peace of mind.
Yes.
And 5, 6, and 7 struggle with giving all the details, okay? And the reason for that is because for 5s in particular, 5s can tend to be very honest in their mind, but they don't necessarily let that parlay to the tongue and come out of their mouth. So when there's things that happen, they just stop talking,
Yeah.
okay? 6 tend to idealize situations and people, right? So if I'm idealizing a situation, I will only focus on the positive parts of it. I'll leave all the negative parts out because I don't want no parts of it. And 7s tend to omit because they want to avoid being wrong. If they made a mistake, if they know they spent $30, $40 and they weren't supposed to, they went over the budget, they're going to leave out that they did that just to keep themselves from feeling bad. So we all do lie when we lie for these various different reasons. It's interesting.
We're talking about the web of lies because a lie has a whole bunch of cousins, and we're talking about those cousins right now. So it's the mistake that you make, it's the omission of truth, and we have a whole lot more to go through. So I hope that you're taking notes. I hope that you're getting something out of this. Come on, hit it, Daniel.
Okay, so restructuring, okay? Restructuring is basically taking the truth and leaving out details. It's similar to omission, but you're restructuring the truth. Highlight the best parts of the story to make it seem like there's nothing to hide. So you're literally fabricating a story. It's like being a storyteller.
Wow.
Right? So I'm not going to go into each type, the details of it, but I will say that 4s, 7s, and 9s struggle with restructuring a story, okay? We'll try to find these good parts to highlight so that there's no questioning.
Kira says, Danielle out here reading everyone with these numbers. That's right. She reading each and every one of
But
you.
guess what? I'm throwing my number in there too, so I am not excluded, and he gets to hear it. So don't remind me about it. Next is denial. Okay. And I want you to speak a little bit about denial. But I mean, we don't connect to the truth. The video that we played yesterday when he was just talking about, like, I make family. I say family's the most important thing, but then I spend 50 hours a week working. I don't spend any time with my family. That is lying. Like, legit, you're saying one thing, but you're doing something completely different. And certain types are in denial of the fact that they're telling lies because they have not faced it or accepted it.
Yeah, there are certain numbers that live in denial, and it's not sometimes I would imagine, Danielle, they're not consciously aware that they're in denial, but they are absolutely in denial and need to come into a space of self-awareness.
Right.
So you take that 3 as an example.
Yes.
That person who says, you know what, family is everything, yet he's gone all the time. In his mind, he's thinking, well, I'm out here working for my family. My 12-hour, 16-hour day is for my family. But time is spent working for, but not with. And so the messaging that the family gets is that, wait a minute, you don't care about us.
Right.
What do you mean I don't care about you? Do you see the sacrifice? Do you see the hard work? Do you see the things I'm doing?
Right.
And so this is why.
But that's the denial part of it, because the focus is work. The most important thing is actually work, not family, because you are showing your family what's most important to you. And for 2s, it's similar. They also struggle with the denial fact because they're loving people and they're always pouring out, and they can appreciate truth and honesty. However, they are in denial about their own needs, and so you have to always say, well, don't you need some rest? No, I'm fine. And they're saying, no, I'm fine, through all these situations and circumstances, and deep down inside resentment is building because they actually do want some support. They actually do want help. So that denial, that's the block. That's the thing that keeps us from being transparent with each other, right? Having the shield, like they got the shields in the classrooms now, the big plexiglass. We have plexiglass in between us as it relates to us being intimate and open and honest. Like, if you need something, could you tell me? Stop withholding information from me. That's the key.
That's so critically important.
Yes.
You guys, we have, listen, at the end of the day, there's some struggles within you that keeps you from properly communicating and being authentic. And then there's some tensions in your relationship. When you can begin to reconcile these things and remove them, life shifts and changes in your relationship. Now it becomes a quality relationship. Who wants to be in a relationship full of lies and deception and false impressions and omission of truth, and it's just, it
and
doesn't.
How freeing is it to be able to be like, yeah, you're right? If you call me on my mess, Danielle, you're avoiding. Okay, yeah, you're right, because guess what? You know my cycles, you know how I roll, you know what it is, and you have permission to call me on the stuff. That just takes a huge burden because I don't have to pretend.
Yeah. But the key to all of that, to accepting what your spouse has to say, is self-awareness. And so many people are just oblivious to who they are and how they show up. So they automatically become defensive. How dare you tell me what I'm doing? Some personalities literally get offended. Like, I can't believe that you view me like that. That's not who I am and what I'm being. No, Joker, that is who you are. That is how you're being. I have a front row seat to your life. I am your mirror. It's the truth. Corliss says, I don't know if you answered this, but is it ever okay to lie?
What's the Bible say?
The Bible gives us several scriptures. On yesterday, we were walking them through. In fact, listen, guys, there's a website that you go to called openbible.info, openbible.info. Type in the word lying. It pulls up every single scripture in the Bible online, and it lays out the foundation for you. If lies are at the core, the crux, and the foundation of your life, of your relationship, then you're not building a relationship on a firm foundation. That house, that relationship, that marriage will come tumbling down. So it's got to be based on truth.
Lies are not acceptable in any case, okay? But the thing is that we are taught differently growing up. I know people who teach their kids about little white lies, that it's okay to tell a little white lie if this, that, and the third. It's really not okay. One lie begets the next lie. We just talked to you about this study that proves that when you lie, you become a liar. Now, truth, none of us have escaped. All of us, once we've learned to speak, at some point we have lied. We started lying when we were children, okay? That's the first thing a child does is lie, right? And you have to correct that. But we know that liars have to keep up with the web of lies that entangle them. Who wants to live that life? And then you get to the point where you don't know who you are or what to do because you've told so many lies. So the answer to that is absolutely not.
Absolutely not. I hope this is helping. You've been listening to Couples Academy Live. We'll be right back after this short commercial.
Hi, my name is Kevin.
And I'm April. And prior to this weekend, we really was in a marriage of a lot of turmoil. I had recently found out infidelity was happening within our marriage, and I was under a lot of stress. I wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating, and basically we were on the road to divorce. So basically, this weekend really meant a lot to us. I really learned a lot about my husband. I learned a lot about relationship and marriages, period. And also how to go through the healing and reconciliation process of what has happened in our marriage.
For me, myself, I'm the type of person, I hold a lot of stuff in. I'm very quiet. I don't speak as much. And these last 3 days have really brought a lot of stuff out of me that my wife didn't know about me, and I'm glad of that. I have apologized. I asked for forgiveness from my wife, and we seem to be going in the right direction. I will continue to ask for forgiveness and continue to pray that our relationship be as one as we first started when we first met each other.
Definitely, I would recommend the intensive session for any couple that is going through major concerns and major issues. I believe a lot of times we go through premarital counseling that is supposed to prepare us for certain things and is supposed to teach us and train us in a way of what we should expect in marriages. But once the marriage actually occurs, sometimes the pre-counseling session just isn't enough. And this basically has really taught me how to love and learn my husband, what to do when we have issues and concerns, to talk it out. Even the act of forgiveness, which we all know that it's what to do and how to do it, maybe not, but it was just great to just hear the proper way of how to forgive, the proper way to apologize, the proper way to communicate, understanding our love languages and items like that I really didn't know anything about prior to this session.
So we're talking about a lover's web of deception, and we just covered a handful of types of lies. The first one was error. A lie that was a mistake, right? Omission, leaving out relevant information. Restructuring, we're literally distorting the context of the story, person, place, or thing, right? Denial, just refusing to acknowledge the truth. And now we're going to talk about the next one, which is minimizing. And this is reducing all the effects of trying to avoid any blame, the impact of the situation.
Okay, I don't know what's
still
happening.
here.
We're still here,
Okay.
guys. But when you minimize, when you minimize what you've done, you're actually forcing your spouse to maximize. It's almost like you're making light of, you're not owning the damage that you have been doing. And so really, if you can minimize it, then you can justify doing it again and again and again and again. And it's just like, you know what, if you've done something wrong, own it. Look at the pain that you've caused. Look at the damage of what you've done, because it's only when you recognize it from that perspective do you no longer do what you once did. But oh, it's no big deal. You're making too much of it. It's not that bad. Then what, in your psychology, you're saying what you did was okay. So any apology is not even going to be authentic at that point.
1s, 7s, and 9s. Okay, gotta call out the number. 1s, 7s, and 9s struggle with minimization. Okay, so let's move to the next one. Exaggeration. is a lie. Okay, you were making it bigger than what it was, more successful than what it was, more, appealing than what it was. It is called lying, and you do that when you exaggerate the facts.
And spouses, not only do we do that with the world and we do that on social media, but oftentimes we do that in relationships, and we're given a false impression. And think about it, when you're dating somebody, when you first start dating, that's oftentimes when we exaggerate the most. We're putting our best foot forward, trying to show the best of who we are, and sometimes we'll fake things. You remember the movies back in the day where, I forgot what movie it was, but How to Be a Player. I remember a dude went to the ATM and looked on the floor and picked up a receipt that said that he had $34,000 in his savings account, and somehow met this girl, and then it dropped. She picks it up, looks at it, and she's like, "Oh, this man's got money." So we do all types of things to exaggerate, because many of us operate in its extreme as con artists.
Yeah.
We're wearing masks, we're wearing disguises, we're giving false impressions, and we continue to do it after we say I do.
And if you're married to a questioning type and you're an exaggerator, it's gonna be situations all the time.
Straight
like,
up
did it really
and down.
happen like that? Well, then what? Tell me exactly the details, and you're gonna start fumbling and stumbling over your words, trying to cover up or keep up with your exaggerated lie. So just don't do it. Just, the Bible talks about, let your word be your word, right? You don't have to exaggerate, or I swear to God. You people say it all the time. I swear to God, it was this and that. No, bro. Just keep it simple and tell it like it is.
There it is.
All right. And 2s, 3s, and 4s. I'm sorry to call y'all out, but 2s, 3s, and 4s struggle with exaggeration. So this is why you need to know your type, because you don't have to stay that way. You can actually develop your personality to the highest level of yourself, so that some of these qualities don't exist anymore.
Steve made an awesome comment. He says, we're kind of taught to lie as kids, like examples like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. I think you're right. It's so embedded in the culture, and we can justify false stories and, oh, they're just kids. Don't rob them of their day.
No, but then you rob them later when you crush their soul
straight up and
by
down.
telling them Santa's not real. Somebody taught me this a long time ago, and I know there's philosophies on that. I'm sure a lot of you taught your kids about Santa Claus, and this isn't a judgment on that, but it was a lesson that I learned, that when you tell your children about Santa Claus, one day you're going to have to crush them and tell them the truth, or they're going to find out. They're going to see you as a liar.
Well,
not only that.
Wait a minute. Whoa. What do you mean the truth? Santa Claus is not real?
See, I don't know what he's talking about. But anywho, right? They are going to actually question you. And they're going to say, you're lying. You lied to me all these years. And then on top of that, now, what about what you've told me about God? What about what you told me about Jesus? Is that a lie too? See, there's so much confusion out here, and so many things being said and taught to our kids, that we have to think about these things. And I've been guilty. I remember putting fairy dust on the windowsill of my kids' window whenever they would lose a tooth, and they were like, "Oh my God, the fairy came!" And I'm like, "Oh, I need to change this up. Let me call it Mommy Fairy." The Mommy Fairy showed up. It was me, So these are the things that, we are taught. It's a good point. We're taught these things at a young age, and sometimes we need to take a step back and reevaluate what was the effect of that on us, right? So that we can make better choices in the future.
This is good.
So the next and the last one is fabrication. You are deliberately inventing a false story. You are straight out lying. Have you ever met like a just straight up, like when I remember going to high school with somebody, he was a young guy, he was super skinny. He was just very skinny, right? This dude would be like, "Yeah, I just ate a bucket of chicken." And we're like, you didn't just eat a bucket of chicken. You're lying. And he was a systemic liar.
A systemic liar.
Or systematic
liar.
He was a systematic liar. Like
compulsive liar.
Right. When he would inhale, every exhale had lies in it. Like just a liar. And that's a sad place to be. And guess what? All Enneagram types can be a liar, a fabricator at your most destructive level.
Wow.
That's what happens. Now you are fully engulfed in all of your negative anxieties, and you are lying to yourself, and you're lying to everybody else.
These are questions that you should think about. Why do I lie? That's the name of the series, Why We Lie. Ask yourself, why do I lie? And what do I get out of the lie? Does the lie actually serve me? Does the lie cause me to live in self-deception? Does the lie impact character and integrity in other areas? Because if I'm lying on my job, does it affect how I show up in my marriage? If I'm lying with my friends, does it affect how I show up with God? Like, whatever starts in one area begins to spread like a cancer to every other part of your life. So you cannot compartmentalize your lie. Well, that's just in that situation. Well, that is who you ultimately become. Going back to the point of the more you do it, it becomes a habit and it's instinctual. Now it changes your character. In essence, what you're saying, it changes the DNA of who you are.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? You think about the narcissist who is literally like they have a mental health issue of not being able to feel and empathize with people, right? That's why you have like serial murderers, serial killers are all narcissists. Well, this study is proving that the more you lie, the closer you become to being narcissistic, which is a mental condition, right? Because you literally change your brain the more that you lie.
So you're training your brain. You're training your subconscious brain. And 95% of all the things that we think, say, and do come from our subconscious mind. And the more you lie and engage in any particular behavior, you're teaching your subconscious mind what's true. Because the thing about it is the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between fact and fantasy. Whatever you put into it, it believes and it operates on your behalf. And so literally you're consciously training your subconscious to be deceptive, to be a liar, and it will not serve you. I hope that you're getting something out of this conversation. We want you to play it and then replay it and then play it again. Take notes, sit down with your spouse, get something good out of this, because this can actually change lives if you take this serious. And this is just a scratching of the surface of what we're going to be talking about in the upcoming masterclass, The More Than Words, The Secret to Breakthrough Communication. So if you haven't registered, people are starting to register. Simply look at the description of the video. The link is there. It's $197. It is 4 hours of impactful information that will transform your life. So listen, guys, we hope that you join us. It's going to be an amazing time. We hope that you get something out of these sessions. I know that we get phone calls and text messages and emails about how it's inspiring them to be a better version of themselves and to have the best relationship that they can have. So listen, guys, we love you, and we will see you in the morning. Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Couples Academy show. My name is Hassani.
I'm Danielle.
And we are here for another great morning to talk to you about all things concerning marriage, relationships, infidelity, divorce, how to get back on track, how to turn things around. And you've been tuning in from all over the world. So we just want to acknowledge you this morning and say thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. We do this every day for around 30 minutes to give you some inspiration and some practical application for your life.
Yeah. Why don't you tell them how many more days to Christmas it is?
There are 8 more days till Christmas.
Are you ready?
And the lines are getting longer. Traffic is getting heavier.
Yeah.
People are getting in at the last minute.
Last week, I went out to the mall and it was completely empty. There was nobody there. And I was like, yes, freedom. I was just as free as I could be. I didn't have my mask on because there was nobody there. I felt so good. But this week, if you were dragging your feet this week, you are paying the price and the penalty. A friend of mine reached out to me yesterday saying she missed all the deadlines to ship things from Amazon. She's got to go out in these streets. So if that's you, don't you waste another minute. You better go ahead and get your shot on. But I just want to say hello to a few people. You know, we're a little bit late today. So I want to say hello to y'all because I see you are waiting already for us. Ty, good morning. Sherry, hi, Steph. Good to see you, Stephen. How y'all doing? LaShawn, good morning. Good morning, G. Good morning, everyone. Hey, Clarence. Hey, Vashawn. Hey, Dee. Hey, Angel. Good morning. I want you to make sure you like and you share and you subscribe. And don't forget to hit the notification bell. That's really important so that you don't miss any shows. We're really excited about today's topic. It's sort of a continuation on what we were talking about yesterday. Today, we're talking about understanding the struggles of the unfaithful partner. Join us now.
All right, we're talking about the struggle of the unfaithful partner. And I think this is an important topic because there's not a lot of information out there. Usually the focus is on the betrayed spouse and what they're going through. And of course, what they've experienced has been traumatic. It has shifted things throughout the course of their life, their relationship, their everything. But often not enough attention is given to the unfaithful partner. And we like to say, listen, both of you are hurting, but in 2 completely different ways. And sometimes the betrayed spouse is so soaked and saturated in their own pain that they don't see, they don't recognize, they don't acknowledge, or don't even believe that the unfaithful partner even deserves to be hurt or have any type of pain.
Absolutely. You know, and I think it's really important to say that we're talking about couples that are actually doing the work. You know, we work with couples every week who are, you know, striving to restore what was lost. So you might hear some of these points here and say, not mine, not mine. Well, that's why we say get yourself into the hands of some good counseling so that you can get the support that you need to get on the road to recovery. But I want to talk to you about the first thing that most unfaithful partners experience, and that is regret. Tremendous amount of regret and self-loathing because they cannot believe that they were able to do something to somebody that they love so much. And I think it's actually a great start to that road to recovery because contrition is the key thing. I want to see that you feel bad. I want to see that, you know, you have a heart and a soul and that it mattered how you felt. I mean, how it felt to me as the hurt partner. So regret is a major part in that journey.
And I think what you said is important. There's a healthy version of it, but we're talking about what they struggle with because some people struggle with regret. Now, there is a season for grieving for both partners, but when your season has been extended and now you're going months and years in and you're sobbing in regret, like it's a painful thing because you start to have internal conversations with yourself. Woe is me. And when you're operating from a very low place, you oftentimes make decisions from a very low, broken place. And you could wind up engaging in more of some of the bad behavior or different behavior because you're stuck and trapped in regret.
Just taking up residency is basically what you're saying in regret. Like you're not moving on, you're not recovering. That regret is not moving you to the next stage. You're just sitting there, and that's when it becomes a problem.
And we want to be clear because we do understand that there are people who have been unfaithful in their relationship and don't think nothing about it. They act like nothing went wrong. They're not accommodating. They don't do anything to help you heal. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about the ones who are actually going through certain challenges. And so one of the other things that they struggle with is failure. Because listen, not only did I fail my spouse, I felt myself. I felt my God. I felt my children. Maybe I'm a part of a community who found out. I failed them. I felt my church. So this sense of failure is something that people really struggle with. And listen, just because you have failed, it doesn't make you a failure. And you don't have to identify with your past as being who you are. You can get beyond it, right? But that is a mental block that a lot of people have that keeps them from being able to do the right thing.
Absolutely. The next one would be feeling of hopelessness. And this happens because, think about it, you ebb and flow during that journey of recovery. So your hurt spouse, sometimes they're doing okay, and then other times they are not doing okay. And even though you are crossing your T's and dotting your I's, still they find some reason to be angry and upset with you. So you can tend to have a sense of hopelessness, like, I'm never going to get through this. They're never going to heal. They're never going to forgive me. We're never going to get it back to the way it was. And so that sense of hopelessness can come in depending on what's going on between the couple.
Absolutely. Now, we also want to recognize that the hurt spouse who has been betrayed, right, the betrayed spouse, oftentimes in the initial discovery phase, it's the most volatile phase of all the phases. And oftentimes in their hurt and in their pain, they project their hurt back onto the unfaithful spouse. And so as a result, the question becomes, well, which side would you rather be on? Many articles have been written about this. Would you rather be the one who cheated or the one who was cheated on? Because the aftermath of the affair can be so horrendous. And so oftentimes the unfaithful spouse will publicly humiliate their spouse. So in essence, the unfaithful spouse experiences public humiliation or private antagonization. So let's unpack this. So I'm going to let the world know. So I'm going to social media and I'm blasting you out and I'm exposing you before the entire world for who you really are. I'm calling your family. I'm calling your friends. I've seen people who have literally taken out billboards and exposed their spouse to the entire world. And so this private matter has spilled into the public arena, and it has had a tremendous amount of impact on one's personal life, their career, their reputation, their standing in the community, all types of things because of the knee-jerk reaction to publicly expose. So you hurt me, you know what? I'm hurting you. You killed my cat, I'm killing your dog, I'm tearing your house down, I'm burning, I'm setting everything ablaze. And oftentimes they suffer that. And that's what's done in public, but then in private, the verbal onslaught oftentimes, they are verbally beat up and beat down and go through so much. And a lot of them sit there and take it because they're like, you know what? I caused this. And so the question becomes, is there ever an end? Like, is there ever any way that spouse can pay for what they've done? So how many more insults? How many more verbal attacks? We've seen people who literally have been beaten and punched and kicked. And physical violence, wrestled down to the ground and treated like a rag doll. These are the things that happen in relationships. Couples come to us all the time. But when it comes to this type of physical abuse, guess what? It's not reported. It's not reported. Typically, it's the unfaithful spouse who's the wife, because typically the man is not going to beat down on the woman if the shoe is on the other foot. But women literally are going in and physically causing harm to their spouses, and their spouse don't report it because they don't want to expose the situation. They don't want to get their spouse in trouble or have them put in jail. And so they just deal with it. And they're coming to work with cuts and bruises and bandages and scars and all types of things because of the struggle that they're facing.
Let's talk about revenge sex, because that's something typical when the hurt partner experiences the affair. They will say, you know what, I'm going to do it 10 times. They did this, I'm going to do it 10 times better. I'm going to really up my game sexually, right? But it's really revenge. Either it's revenge against the husband or the wife, the spouse, or it's revenge against that affair partner. Like, you took this away from me, now I'm going to take it back. But talk a little bit about how revenge sex affects the unfaithful partner.
It shows up different ways. So there's this term called hall pass, right? So if a person is frustrated with the fact that you cheated on me and you took listen, how could you do this? I want my chance. I want to go out. I want to have fun. I want to go out and have sex so that you know how it feels. Because if I have sex with you and hurt you, it'll make me feel better. And oftentimes it doesn't. So in this back and forth exchange, oftentimes some unfaithful partners say, well, fine, I'll give you a hall pass, meaning I'll give you a freebie to go out there and have sex with someone to even up the score. Wow.
Wow.
That's what happens. Or a person is panicked and frustrated and would never allow their spouse to engage in sex with another person. So that's where the double standard comes in. So it was okay for you to do it, but for them to be tempted to do it, now it's a major problem. So there's nothing positive that comes out of that scenario at all.
Yeah, I do recall scenarios where the hurt partner wanted a chance to cheat. Like, you sowed your royal oats and now I want my chance. I've wanted to do it too, but I was faithful. But since you did it, now it's giving me the keys, right, to be able to do the same thing. So that makes a lot of sense. So now the revenge is actually on the unfaithful partner because you did it to me and I'm going to do it to you.
Or if it's not revenge sex, like I'm going to do it once or twice or 3 times, you know what? I want an open marriage. That's what I want. You know what? This has been closed. You haven't honored it. I have. And now I want something different and you're going to have to deal with it. And so we've kind of counseled couples through that struggle too, because that has even had a tremendous effect on their relationship, their family, their future. Yeah. And people really struggle in major ways with that type of stuff.
Let's talk about guilt and shame. You think about when there's an affair that takes place, everybody tends to find out. Your family, the in-laws, you know, your hurt partner is so angry. They're telling everybody, like Hassani is saying, blasting it everywhere, even on your job. I've known people to go to the job and let people know this is an affair that's happening at the job, and they have caused their spouse to lose their job as a result. So there's a tremendous amount of guilt and shame associated with having an affair. This is something that the unfaithful partner has to deal with.
And guilt and shame are like cousins, right? So this is why oftentimes the unfaithful spouse struggles to have the conversation with their spouse. Like, we've talked about this for, I don't know, the last few weeks, the last few months, and we still keep having the conversation. And the reason why the unfaithful partner doesn't want to talk about it is because they're reminded of the pain that they've caused their spouse. They can see it. They see you hurting. They see you crying. They see you enraged. And it's a reminder of what they did. And so there's a sense of guilt that they have. But then having the conversation forces me to look at my own self. It forces me to look at my own dark past, which I'm trying to avoid. I'd rather cleanse my past. And so when you bring it up, now I'm dealing with shame because I'm reminded of all the bad things that I've done. And I don't like that guy. I don't like that person. I don't like that woman. And I want to get as far away as possible as I can. And so shame is something that people try to avoid because it's something that they struggle with.
Yeah, we have a comment here. It says, I cheated on my partner one time. I tried to have sex with someone else, but I couldn't go through with it. I asked my partner to try to have sex with someone else if they wanted to, but they didn't want to. Well, that's a slippery slope that you slide down, but I've heard of other people do it. That's called the hall pass, according to Hassani. And you know what? What does that do? That just opens up Pandora's box for revenge. I have a client that actually had that same mindset and is so glad that neither of them stepped out there, because that's literally moving into the open marriage concept, right? I did it, now you do it, and now you've given each other permission. And how do you turn that off? It's really difficult to do.
It's very difficult to do. One of the other things that the unfaithful partner suffers is disrespect. And the disrespect comes from a multitude of places. See, you have to understand that when you cheated on your spouse, you actually cheated on your family. Other people were affected by your actions. So not only are you going to receive most likely some level of disrespect from your spouse, but oftentimes the children are affected. Now, depending upon the age of those children, they all may react differently. We've seen that the younger children they don't necessarily have a sense of what's going on. Maybe it's protected or shielded from them. But if they're in that, preteen, teenage year, you may feel it. If they know, they can oftentimes be very disrespectful, either by what they say or the avoidance of you. It's almost like you don't even exist. They don't feel like they have to honor you. They have to respect you in any way because you hurt my mom, you hurt my dad. And that's a whole nother relationship that needs to be restored in the process, not just the spousal relationship, but the relationship that you have with the children. Disrespect can come from other family members, extended family members. Like, you wanted to be unfaithful to my sister or to my daughter or to whomever. Now there's the onslaught of the verbal attack, if you will, or the disrespect from extended family members, which is a whole nother situation. So it really has an impact in so many different ways.
Absolutely. Kia says, good morning. I considered revenge sex. That's not who I am as a person, so I keep my legs closed. And that's really what it boils down to, right? We can't jump on the bandwagon if we have completely different values. And that's why it's so hard for us to accept accept when our partners are unfaithful to us, and we would never do such a thing, right? We don't understand, how could you do such a thing when that's something that I wouldn't do? So it makes sense to stay in your lane, really. Just stay in your lane.
And let me just say this, for those of you who, that's just not who you are, and you wouldn't reduce yourself to such a behavior. Some of these individuals are the very ones that will use other tactics. So fine, I won't cheat on you, but I'm going to make you suffer. I'm going to put you through hell. You are going to feel what I feel. Mm-hmm. And that's when the onslaught comes. And that's when we begin to justify all the bad behavior, as mentioned, whether it's verbal, whether it's physical, whether it's I'm shutting everything down, I'm refusing to show up in terms of, my role as a wife or how I function in this relationship. There have been people who have completely checked out, completely, because that was their form of payment, if you will, or punishment for their partner. And so what that does, obviously it has an impact on the unfaithful spouse, but it also has an impact on you as well. And so ideally, if you're in the marriage and you want to recover, there's certain things that both of you need to do to get out of this sufferer marital pattern, which we've talked about again and again and again.
Yeah, we have another comment. May You Be Peaceful says, my partner told everyone that I cheated on them, and it literally ruined, it was hard for me. I lost almost all my friends. And here's the deal with that. Think about, you're losing your friends, and we just talked about some people lose their jobs. Other folks hold children against them, right? So they've lost their children and their family. You lose your finances. These are the consequences of having an affair. Right? This is the whole point here. The unfaithful partner has to experience some level of consequences, and you never think about that until it's too late, right? Yeah. And you don't know what they're going to be.
You just don't.
You have no idea, right? There's a whole gamut of things that you can experience. And we're not even talking about children being birthed, diseases, and all kinds of things in between. There are consequences that we have to pay for our actions.
And that's why you want to rehearse the consequences of sexual sin before you engage in it. To ask yourself, is this really worth it? Because people will throw away, to your point, their finances, their career, their marriages for a moment of gratification. And interestingly enough, a lot of people will even admit that it wasn't even all that. So now you didn't even get the experience you wanted, and you've lost. So in essence, we talk about this, in our book, Pimping from the Pulpit to the Pews, Exposing and Expelling the Spirit of Lust in the Church. We talk about Adam and how Adam fell and how God gave him instructions. He disobeyed, and he gained so little to lose so much. And oftentimes, when you look at it in the proper context, this relationship, this affair that you had, this one-night stand, this emotional connection, it really did maybe it did something for you in the moment and you felt euphoria and, oh my God, but in the grand scheme of things, you gained so little to lose so much. And the more you begin to think about these things, right, thinking with your big head instead of your little one, or if you're the female, thinking with your right mind, it will prevent you from engaging in all types of destruction that happens all around you.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever sat in front of anybody that said, I regret this, man, but it was worth it. Not once.
I don't think we've ever had that.
Not once. No.
Definitely not in a counseling session.
We got another comment here from D'Angelo. Good morning. You have to be careful what doors you open seeking revenge. Some doors are very hard to close once they're opened. Very well said.
I want to go to another point, because this is something that we need to be mindful of. As we speak to a lot of unfaithful spouses, a lot of times they suffer a physical, mental, and emotional breakdown. Because the weight that they're carrying is so heavy. Obviously, there's the pain that the betrayed spouse is carrying, but they're also carrying some of that pain because of the regret and the guilt that they feel. But then, as we just said, the way that the betrayed spouse can sometimes treat the unfaithful spouse, they're really dealing with it. And so a lot of times they have sleepless nights because they're arguing or having conversations till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, then got to get up and go to work at 6, and they can't focus on work. They're stressed out. They're losing sleep. They're not eating enough. They're literally physically breaking down. Many people have gone to the hospital because of the breakdown that they're experiencing internally. And it's important for you to understand what your partner's going through, because if they're a major contributor to the household, whether financially, whether their involvement with the children, if I'm a broken me, I'm going to be a broken husband. I'm going to be a broken father. I'm going to be a broken employee or business owner. I'm going to be broken in every facet of my life. And I need to be at my best in order to get through, in order to recover, in order to help restore all that has been lost. So I want you to consider the physical, emotional, and mental challenges that the unfaithful partner goes through. A lot of times there's a need for conversation that the betrayed spouse has. And so listen, we're getting up crack of dawn. We're staying up late at night. I'm being terror texted all throughout the course of the day. I'm in a meeting and I haven't responded to you, and you think I'm cheating, and I don't have the freedom just to function in a normal, healthy way because we're still dealing with what's happening at home. And so if there aren't proper expectations and boundaries in place to protect the both of you as you go through this journey, I mean, people have literally, to the point, lost jobs because their mental capacity and the performance was just way off.
Absolutely. We got a comment from Ty. She says, should younger kids even be told the situation? And I think that is such a delicate area. And I've seen this handled wrong so many times, where a couple will be using the children as leverage against the other, and that is just so inappropriate. I think it depends on the scenario, and we never need to tell our children every single solitary detail. If they're old enough that they might hear it in the streets, you might owe them a little bit more of an explanation. But as children, no, you want to guard them, you want to protect them and insulate them from what you're going through. So you want to make sure that what you do share with them is appropriate. For example, if daddy is leaving the house because there's a separation, they need to understand that daddy's not going to be here. If there's going to be a divorce, they need to understand, okay, mommy and daddy are not going to be together, but daddy still loves you. We both still love you, and we're going to figure out how we're going to get visitation. Like, you just have to make sure that whatever you're sharing with the children, it's about protecting the children and not about your win, your gain, or getting them on your side, because it's not about you. In this case, it's about the children.
And on top of that, for instance, if they somehow did find out, or if they didn't, the two of you need to have the proper messaging that you present to the children. Like, and this is the problem, like, they're hearing things, they're hearing bumping, they're hearing arguing, muffles, they're seeing all of it. Yes. And so to your point, you do have to protect your children from your marriage. But if they find out, the last thing you want is for the hurt partner to speak on behalf of the other, or the unfaithful partner to speak on the behalf of the other, because it shows further division. It further confuses the kids. They're forced to now make a decision. It's painful for them. They're not understanding. A lot of times they blame themselves for what's happening amongst their parents. And so it's a really delicate thing, and that's why we encourage you.
And what do you mean by younger too? Because teens are younger to me. Like, teens are young kids. How do you talk to them? They do know things, right? They do hear the bumping in the middle of the night. They do know when mommy and daddy are not on the same page. So you absolutely need to make sure that you're speaking to the children at their age appropriateness, what they need to know.
Absolutely. Well, one of the last points, and then we'll take any questions that happen. In some really extreme cases, we have seen where, yes, we've seen it on the betrayed side, but even on the unfaithful side, where suicidal attempts have been made. People who have really considered taking their lives because of the pain that they are going through, or the constant reminder of the pain that they've caused. Now, there's a phenomenal book called The Myth of Male Power. Phenomenal book. And in there's a chapter that unpacks this whole notion of the suicide sex. Now, interestingly enough, when boys reach the age of adolescence, the suicide rate amongst males skyrockets 24,000% higher for boys than it does for girls, because they come into this normal idea of what the roles and responsibilities of and expectations of a male is supposed to be, and a lot of them can't deal with it. But in the context of a relationship, see, this is the thinking. Man, if I'm the problem and I'm constantly being reminded that it's my fault, 99%, 100%, it's on me, then in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if I'm the trigger, if I'm the problem, then let me remove myself. It would be better if I leave. It will be better if I just take my life, because I'm removing myself and all of that I've caused from your world. Warped thinking, but that's the thought. So rather than doing what's necessary to restore oneself and now to be the solution to the problem that you've created, your knee-jerk reaction for some is, let me just take my life. And people have done it. People have attempted to do it. And you think you're doing something noble by removing yourself, and your spouse is like, that's even more selfish. So not only did you cause the harm, and now you're going to leave me to figure this whole thing out by myself. And so this is why, if you're in that type of state, you need counseling. You cannot do this on your own. Stop trying to fix your problems by yourself. If I'm in physical pain, I'm going to a doctor. If my car is acting funny, I'm going to a mechanic. Like, I don't know why when it comes to matters of the heart, we think we can just figure this thing out on our own.
I have no idea. We got a couple more comments. Haz has a question that has been asked a couple times, and this is the first time we're going to address it here. And it is, what about the soul ties that's birthed by stepping out? Which is a very relevant point when we're talking about the unfaithful partner and consequences. And if you don't know what soul ties is, it's the concept, and it's a biblical concept. I don't know if it's in other spiritual teachings, but that when you engage in sex with someone, that a part of their spirit or soul is left within you. And so now you might take on certain characteristics and habits of that person. So you can imagine how that might affect you person after person after person. There is something that is a really great teaching. I don't know if you know about Juanita Bynum and T.D. Jakes, but they have a teaching called No More Sheets. And it actually talks so much about this and gives you practical steps on how to pray and release soul ties. But that is a reality. That is something that is known in the Christian faith, and it's something that's a reality that people have to deal with when it comes to stepping out.
And for those who aren't in the Christian faith, many of you know the term entanglement, right?
There you go.
Now that's the term
Spiritual.
that's being used. There's a spiritual and emotional entanglement. And let's just say, listen, the affair ends on Monday, right? All right, so it came to an end. It's over. You are now done. But on Wednesday, even though you may be single from that person, you may be separate from that person. Are you single from that person? Well, maybe not. Maybe their thoughts are still, or the thoughts of them are still in your mind. You're still dreaming about them, having memories of them. Maybe you still have articles and gifts and possessions attached to them. You've got to go through a detox if you've had an affair with a man, or a she-tox if you've had an affair with a woman. Getting that person completely out of your system, out of your heart, out of your mind. Because if there are any attachments to that person, you can't give all of your heart and all of your mind to your spouse, because there's pieces and parts and fragments that are spread out all over the place. And this is why emotional affairs are so impacting, because it's not just about the physical act. So fine, I stopped sleeping with that person a month ago, but if the presence of that person is still with me, on me, in me, there's still a soul tie that needs to be broken. So it's a major, major, major issue.
Yeah, so we can take a few more questions. Here's one. My father serially cheated on my mother when I was a child, and I was usually the one who caught him. That was really difficult for me to go through as a child. He resented me for telling my mother. And you know, these are the things, these are the bitter roots that we experience coming up. And they tell you all the time that, you know, your personality is shaped by 7, right? This is where these personalities come into play. It would be really helpful for you to do some deep digging in your own personality style to see how that shaped you and how it's shaping how you move in your relationship. So reach out to us. We offer a 15-minute consultation. It's absolutely free to see if there's anything we could do to support you.
Guys, I hope you got something out of today's message. If you've listened yesterday, we were talking about the struggles of the betrayed spouse. Today, we're talking about the struggles of the unfaithful spouse. Listen, tomorrow's Q&A. Come with your questions. We are here to answer.
Right. If we didn't get to your question today, because I see they're all jumping in now. They always jump in at the last minute with 30,000 questions.
30
I
minutes.
can't answer the questions right now. But make sure you show up on Friday, because we will be in front of the firing squad to answer all your questions as fast as you can get them to us. So make sure you copy and paste your question out and save it for Friday. We will get to those questions.
Love you guys. See you soon.